Learning is good, right? I think we're all on the same page here. But have you ever come across some idea that was just unclear to you? Then you try and grapple with it and comprehend it, but you just end up frustrated. Unclear ideas can not only make learning difficult, but it could also ruin the enjoyment. Clear ideas, then, are pretty helpful when you're out there trying to learn. Furthermore, clear ideas help us act. I mean, we all know the struggle of dealing with unclear instruction manuals or unclear rules. I mean, try living your life on the basis of unclear ideas and it's gonna get messy. Thankfully, the American philosopher Charles Sanders Peirce also understood the importance of clear ideas. It is a terrible thing to see how a single unclear idea, a single formula without meaning, lurking in a young man's head, will sometimes act like an obstruction of inert matter in an artery, hindering the nutrition of the brain and condemning its victim to pine away in the fullness of his intellectual vigor, and in the midst of intellectual plenty. But then the natural next question is, what is a clear idea? And furthermore, how do we make our ideas clear? In this video, we're going to be continuing to build up our foundation of pragmatism videos by looking at the essay, How to Make Our Ideas Clear by Charles Sanders Peirce. Hello and welcome to Philosophy Tunes, the channel that's just having a good time playing the new Halo and reading pragmatic philosophy. Speaking of which, I'd highly recommend checking out our last video on Peirce as there is some overlap between the ideas expressed in both essays. So this video is broken up into two parts. First, we're going to look at some previous attempts by logicians to grasp what the clearness of an idea is, and then we're going to look at Peirce's idea and the infamous pragmatic maxim. Without further ado then, let's get into it. Peirce starts off the essay by cracking open his 19th century logic book and seeing how logicians back then talked about the clearness of an idea. He notes that they created two distinctions between ideas. An idea can either be clear or obscure, and furthermore, an idea can either be distinct or confused. Let's look at how each are defined, starting with the clear idea. A clear idea is defined as one which is so apprehended that it will be recognized whenever it is met with, and so that no other will be mistaken for it. If it fails of this clearness, it is said to be obscure. So basically, a clear idea is one where you encounter it, you recognize it, and won't mistake it for something else. So for example, take the idea of a tree. You know when you go to the park and you encounter a tree and you're like, yep, that's a tree. And no, I'm not mistaking it for a copy of Wallace and Gromit Project Zoo for the PlayStation 2. But Peirce isn't a big fan of this definition because it's heavily reliant upon the subject and their interpretation. They could easily be mistaken. Merely to have such an acquaintance with the idea as to have become familiar with it, and to have lost all hesitancy in recognizing it in ordinary cases, hardly seems to deserve the same name of clearness of apprehension. Since after all, it only amounts to a subjective feeling of mastery, which may be entirely mistaken. So remember our tree example? What if one of those trees were fake? Like, I know fake plants are a thing, but I don't know, someone can make a fake plastic tree. And if the person is mistaken and still believes it to be a tree, then their idea of a tree would still be a clear idea according to these older logicians, and that seems a bit wonky. Next, Peirce looks at the old logicians' distinction between distinct and obscure ideas. By the contents of an idea, logicians understand whatever is contained in its definition, so that an idea is distinctly apprehended according to them when we could give a precise definition of it in abstract terms. So it helped me to understand by just focusing on that last part. It seems to me at least that a distinct idea is one where we could provide a precise definition. This seems like common sense, so what's the problem here? Well, it's a bit unclear, ironically, but Peirce believes this distinction is disregarding the enginery of modern thought and never dreaming of applying its lessons to the improvement of logic. Now, I'm not 100% on this, but as we'll see later on once we get into Peirce's own ideas, I think the problem with distinct ideas is that it's a bit rigid and doesn't leave room for evolution. Definitions are subject to change, and I've seen this firsthand in the area of law. A statute, for instance, will give out a rule and then the courts will define the specific language of that statute. However, the definition is subject to change and the courts who define them change over time. But yeah, the takeaway here is that the previous distinctions are not bad per se, but they're only steps towards a much better process of getting a clear idea. It may be acknowledged therefore that the books are right in making familiarity with a notion the first step toward clearness of apprehension, and the defining of it the second. But in omitting all mentions of any higher perspicuity of thought, They simply mirror a philosophy which was exploded 100 years ago. So what is this third step, or grade as Peirce calls it, of clearness? For this, we finally get to look at the infamous pragmatic maxim, a cornerstone of pragmatism. So you know what, no more screwing around, let's just do it. Let's just get into the pragmatic maxim here. Consider what effects that might conceivably have practical bearings we conceive the object of our conception to have. Then, our conception of these effects is the whole of our conception of the object. So we're going to focus on the first part of this statement because the second part is a bit metaphysical, and that's not really my jam. But the channel Logic and Philosophy covers it, and their video is also a much more in-depth video analysis of this essay than what I'm doing here, so go check them out. But anyways, the first part is asking us not to look at an idea from some abstract floating in space perspective, but to rather look at how the idea actually plays out in the world, or how the idea acts, for lack of a better word. I know an example would really help out here, so let's look at the one that Peirce himself provides. He's going to use this pragmatic maxim to look at the idea of hard. Let us ask what we mean by calling a thing hard. Evidently that it will not be scratched by many other substances. The whole conception of this quality, as of every other, lies in its conceived effects. There is absolutely no difference between a hard thing and a soft thing, so long as they are not brought to the test. So here we see almost a scientific method way of gaining clarity over an idea, and this calls back to the second grade of clarity Peirce notes about an idea being distinct if we could precisely define it. With this new approach that looks more at the effects, it's almost like we're testing ideas, and with these new tests come new information. And with new information, we might end up changing our definitions. So for example, we could test out whether or not different substances are hard, and through these tests they refine our clarity of the idea of something being hard. The pragmatic maxim therefore allows for experimentation, change, evolution, and testing. Now Peirce is a Renaissance man. Not only was he a philosopher, but he was a scientist and a logician, and you could clearly see as you read the essay that he's using the pragmatic method in the realm of science. Contrast this with William James, who has appeared on this channel many times before, and he uses the pragmatic method in more personal human affairs. We're pretty much done with the actual essay analysis if you want to dip, but I just want to say that this pragmatic method specifically used by James has been foundational for this channel and its content. So even though these pragmatism origin videos may not do super well, it's important for me to build that foundation for why I do what I do here. Does that make sense? It's like having a channel that talks about different themes in different books, but also having videos explaining what literary analysis even is in the first place. I don't know, maybe I'm just rambling. And with that, we are at the end of the video. I think our next pragmatism video will actually get into James and his pragmatism lectures, but it might be a while before then. If you enjoyed the video, then give me a like and a sub and a bell ring and a comment if you'd like to share your thoughts. And also, of course, I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.